And they're still coming. That's good news.
It's a good sign.
It is. It is.
Yeah, great turnout today, which is great. Appreciate everybody joining in.
Ryan, ready to go?
I'm good.
All righty. Let's get going. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for this Congressional Future of Work Caucus event focused on getting displaced workers the skills they need to succeed in the wake of COVID-19. I am so pleased to be joined by my co-chair, Representative Brian Stile, our distinguished panelists who you will hear from, my colleagues from the caucus, and I saw our chairman. We've been graced by our chairman of the Education and Labor Committee, Bobby Scott. We are glad to have you, as well as other members who will be joining us for this conversation. And I also want to give a special thank you to Will from Representative Stiles' office for managing our Zoom platform today and our time clock. So watch out for the time clock, as well as Agatha from my team for all of your hard work in organizing this. And let me begin by setting the table for why we are here today and why this conversation is so critical. As we speak, nearly 17 million Americans continue to collect unemployment benefits compared to just 2 million Americans before the pandemic. Over 4 million Americans are considered long-term unemployed compared to approximately 1 million pre-pandemic. And we've seen a real and persistent crisis for women, with 2.5 million being forced out of the workforce. It almost feels like we're going backwards. And shockingly, we've also seen the adverse economic impacts of COVID-19 to lead 1 in 10 Black folks and 1 in 12 Latino Americans being unemployed. And while these changes and challenges are, daunting, they may seem daunting, the shift also represents an opportunity for us to create a better and brighter future for our constituents. We know that at the same time all of this is happening, all of these transformations and the use of technology, it's shifting the way we work, live, and learn, which is why Representative Stile and I began the caucus in the first place. But we know that one of the biggest challenges is making sure that displaced workers have access to the new skills they need, and that we're creating jobs where those displaced workers are. So we pulled together some incredible issue area experts to talk about how we can meet that challenge and create real economic prosperity. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to my fellow co-chair, Representative Brian Stile.
Thank you, Congresswoman Lisa Blunt Rochester. Great to be with you. You can feel the energy that you bring to this and the energy you bring to representing the state of Delaware here in the House. Today's conversation is really, to me, it's about how to best to prepare workers for the jobs of the future. And this is all the more important after a really difficult 12 to 13 months as we've been navigating through the coronavirus pandemic. And far too often, Congress gets bogged down in partisanship. And I couldn't be more pleased to work with my co-chair, Democratic Congresswoman Lisa Blunt Rochester, as we work to really address the challenges and find real practical solutions that we can move forward with. One of the things that I hear time and again, whether or not it's in Kenosha, Wisconsin, or a national employer, is looking and figuring for them how they can identify skilled workers, in particular skilled workers for the jobs of the future. And it's been a challenge always, but uniquely so, I think, throughout this pandemic. And at this event, we have a number of speakers who've dealt with this and have solutions to some of our workforce needs. One of them that we're going to be introducing, Dr. Ulbrick, has been a leader at Gateway Technical College in Racine and Kenosha area. He's been building some of these relationships with high schools between them and the technical college that he oversees. Looking forward to that part of the conversation. But as we work to build this for the future, I believe it's imperative that we're looking at our government's current role in workforce training, discussion about what's currently working and what's currently not working that we could work together on to improve. I think that's an important piece of today's conversation. And so to keep this moving along, I'm going to go right back to you, Congresswoman Blunt Rochester, but really excited for today's conversation.
Me too. And thank you so much, Brian. And we have 5 panelists today, and we're going to go straight to the panelists. I'm going to start off with Dr. James Manyika, the senior partner at McKinsey Global Institute, to really sort of lay the foundation for us, to kind of give us a sense of what we're experiencing and what some of the trends are. And I'm going to turn it over to you, Doctor.
Thank you very much, Representatives Rochester and Stile and members of the caucus. When COVID hit, it made many across the country vulnerable to layoffs, furloughs, and reduced hours. It also brought into sharp focus trends that have been impacting the workforce for a decade or more and look set to continue unless we address them. I'd like to highlight 5 of these trends. Number 1, wage stagnation and labor market polarization. While wages grew for some US workers, the majority saw flat or falling wages in real terms, even as costs of basics such as housing, healthcare, and education rose faster. One reason for this was that much of the job growth has been in low-wage parts of the service sector, such as hospitality, retail, food preparation, and care work, which make up about 1/3 of workers and is growing. Number 2, technology's impact, contrary to some popular press, is not leading to a jobless future, but it is contributing to a decline in some jobs, especially middle-wage jobs, and is driving growth in demand for high-wage and high-skilled jobs. And as some jobs decline and others grow, 1/4 of US workers may need to switch occupations by 2030, and most will need new skills. An even wider effect of technology will be the share of jobs that will change as machines complement workers, further raising the need for reskilling and lifelong learning. Over the last year, we've seen companies enlist AI and automation to cope with COVID's disruptions and may indeed accelerate adoption in the years ahead, putting more robots into plants, warehouses, and adding self-service customer kiosks and service robots. Number 3, much of the job growth in the US has been in contingent, fissured, independent, and gig work. Roughly 60 million Americans are part of the independent workforce as their primary source of income or as a complement. While some have benefited from the income, opportunities, and flexibility, most have faced uncertain and variable hours, lower hourly wages, and a lack of benefits such as training, leading to more job and income fragility, cut off career pathways, and inadequate or non-existent safety nets. Number 4, job growth has been very uneven across the country, and this could continue. We examined all 3,149 counties across the US and found that they've been on divergent trajectories for more than a decade. For instance, over 2,000 counties where 128 million Americans live saw flat to negative job growth since the last recession. At the same time, just 25 large cities and hubs accounted for over 2/3 of US job growth since the Great Recession and are likely to benefit from technology and other trends and go on to capture 60% of job growth through 2030. Number 5, women, people of color, young people have been hardest hit and most challenged looking forward. Let me give some examples. Women are overrepresented in low-wage jobs. Women overwhelmingly carry the burden of unpaid work, housework, and care work, which can amount to more than 15 hours of additional work per week. Because of this double shift, many women consider downshifting their careers or leaving the workforce altogether. In fact, in COVID, that number has risen to about 1 in 4. Another example, 45% of Black workers are in 3 sectors and in frontline occupations that have some of the lowest wages. This is in healthcare support, retail, accommodation, and food service. No wonder 43% of Blacks overall earn less than $30,000 per annum versus 28% for the rest of the workforce. Less than 1 in 10 Blacks live in counties with high job growth. 1/3 of Black and Hispanic workers are in occupations with the highest risk of automation. I could go on, but let me sum up with 3 key imperatives. First, reskilling is urgently needed at scale and pace to match the challenge. This may require creating human capital investment incentives for companies, similar to those we've established to encourage investment in capital and R&D. Second, focus must be on people and places around the country who are experiencing and can expect disproportionate impacts in order to create an equality of opportunity for them. And third, the decline in public goods investments, including in infrastructure, that are foundational to creating equality of opportunity must be reversed. In COVID, we learned how critical digital infrastructure was and how much bigger the divide was than previously acknowledged. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Doctor. And you did a phenomenal job. That was a lot to try to cover in 3 minutes, but you did a phenomenal job, a skill that you have. I'm going to now turn it over to Department of, it's so funny, I was going to say Department of Health and Social Services because she has actually served in many jobs in state government in leadership roles, that last one. So she has a background in health and social services, but is currently, as of January this year, the Secretary of Labor for the state of Delaware, and formerly a person who worked with me for our current Senator Tom Carper when he was in Congress a few decades ago. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Delaware Secretary of Labor, Carol Hubbard. Oops, and you're on mute.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on this panel this afternoon. I appreciate the opportunity to have this discussion, but because it is so critical. So don't have much time, so I'm going to try to talk a little bit about what we're focused on here in Delaware. The mission of the Delaware Department of Labor, the Division of Employment and Training, is to provide services enabling both employers and job seekers to make informed employment and training choices leading to employment. E&T operates a statewide labor exchange program serving both employers and job seekers. We call it our gateway. It's joblink.delaware.gov, and it's an internet-based job search and resume creation tool that is utilized by both employers and individuals seeking work. It's accessible 24 hours a day. Our agency, together with the Workforce Development Board, administers approximately 15 different federal and state funded employment and training programs that assist individuals with social, economic, educational, and other barriers to make the transition to employment. Our state has 4 full service delivery locations and a satellite office. Each one of these one-stop offices has computers that provide our customers with access to the internet, and a resource room where clients may be offered career and training services. And these are under the umbrella of the one-stop. So our services can be obtained in a number of ways, whether it's one-on-one, group services, self-service, with some staff assistance or full-blown counseling, or with no help at all. Some of the services available are resume development, job search, job clubs, career assessment and planning, job search, computer training, veteran services, bonding assistance, adult basic education, and other funds for training and education. I will say, in many ways, we are taking a back to basics approach because we have a lot of services and funding available for training. We have 350 training programs that are available in the state of Delaware that will full or partially fund individuals seeking job training. So in many ways, we are reminding people that we are here and that we are here to help, and that many of the challenges post-COVID are those same challenges pre-COVID. As was indicated before, there tends to be a disparate impact on individuals of color during this pandemic, and we are focusing hard on making sure that all Delawareans have access to the services that we provide in our agency. So,
thank you very much.
Thank
you very much, Secretary. And I now have the honor of introducing the Director of Workforce Initiatives at the Manufacturing Institute, Cassie Zumbiel, who will give us, I know has a lot of perspective as to what job creators are seeing across the United States. Cassie?
Thank you, Congressman, and I appreciate you having me here today. As the 501c3 Workforce Development and Education Partner of the National Association of Manufacturers, the Manufacturing Institute is a trusted advisor to manufacturers, equipping them with resources necessary to solve the industry's toughest challenges. I thought it'd be helpful to quickly touch on how the manufacturing sector has been impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic from a workforce perspective. In February, there were 538,000 manufacturing jobs open. Over the past 6 months, postings in the sector have averaged more than 505,000 each month, including October's reading, which hit a record high at 545,000. In the past 11 of 13 quarters, finding and retaining talent is the #1 challenge that manufacturers say they're facing. According to a study that the Manufacturing Institute released with Deloitte in 2018, the manufacturing industry may have as many as 4.6 million jobs created between now and 2028, but the skills gap may leave an estimated 2.4 million of those jobs unfilled between 2018 and 2028 and put 2.5 trillion in manufacturing GDP at risk. We will have a revised study coming out in the next month with Deloitte on those numbers. However, we don't expect a huge change for 3 main reasons. One is the aging workforce. As of 2017, nearly 1/4 of the sector's workforce were age 55 or older. The number's only gone up. It's not only a challenge when individuals retire because you're losing them as a worker, but also because you're losing all of their knowledge and skill sets that they bring to the workforce. The second challenge is the perception problem. There's a perception of manufacturing, especially among youth and their parents, that manufacturing is dirty, dark, and dangerous. Unlike other sectors where individuals can see someone or experience it themselves, such as healthcare, construction, or retail, manufacturing is often an area that people never get to see or experience, which causes many misconceptions of the industry. Finally, the third challenge is the shifting skill set needs. Manufacturers need individuals with the technical training, but also individuals who have skills such as teamwork, problem solving, digital skills, critical thinking. To address these challenges, we need an all-above solution, which includes training, upskilling, earn and learn programs and apprenticeships, 2- and 4-year degrees, certifications, and second chance hiring. Some of the ways manufacturers in your districts are trying to address this challenge is through experiences such as Creators Wanted and MFG Day, with the goal to change the perception of manufacturing and increase the number of individuals entering the sector. Also through earn and learn programs and apprenticeship programs. Manufacturers want to work with the workforce system and educators to provide individuals with skills that are necessary to be successful in a manufacturing career. Thank you for your continued focus on the future of work and the needs of displaced workers and companies to close the skills gap. Turn it back over to you.
Thank you. And next up, we have Dr. David Otter, co-chair of the MIT Work of the Future Task Force. Dr. Otter.
Thank you, Representative Rochester and Representative Stile. I want to build on what my colleague James Manika said about changes in the composition of work, and particularly how they interact with the COVID pandemic. A lot of people talk about how COVID might have, caused technological change, and the most significant workforce technological change that's happening is one that we see all around us, and that is telepresence. My co-chair, task force co-chair David Mindell once said that telepresence is a form of automation. He was actually talking about control of underwater exploratory vessels, but the point applies actually to workplaces where many of the things that we have done in person, we now realize we can be done remotely. These technologies, of course, have been around for a very long time. The big innovation of COVID is not that I have Zoom, but it's that all of you are using Zoom, that we're all on it at the same time, and that we've all agreed that this makes sense. And so there was a time when you wouldn't want to buy a telephone unless your friends and family were going to buy a telephone. Well, it's if we've all bought a telephone, and now we're all connected in this way. So it's a solution to a coordination problem, but it has very substantial implications. For many of us, it means more convenience, higher productivity, less commuting, potentially more time with family. But for many other people whose jobs are there to see to the care and comfort and convenience of individuals going to their offices and going on business trips, this means a decline in demand, particularly in urban areas. In May of 2019, 9% of US employment was in food serving and preparation occupations, 9% in transportation, 3% in buildings and grounds cleaning, another 4.6% in protective services, and leisure and hospitality, which double count some of these, had 17 million jobs. Many of the individuals in those jobs are low paid. They do not have college degrees. They are vastly overrepresent minorities and women. And these jobs will be seeing a decline in demand because we will be doing less commuting to work, less going out for lunch and dinner near our offices, less driving, and less business travel, which doesn't just mean airplanes, but also limousines and Ubers, expensive hotels on weeknights, expensive expense account restaurants, and so on. And so this is going to create hardship for the people who were already the most vulnerable in our economy. And much of the economy is already bouncing back. So professional and business services are down, only down 5% from what they were prior to the pandemic. Leisure and hospitality is still down 31%. That's an enormous number. And so we're going to need to think about how people move into more stable, better paid jobs with more of a career ladder. These jobs were not good jobs prior to the pandemic, but ironically, having too few of them is worse than having too many. At least when there were too many, they were competing hard for workers. Now they are not. And so long-term solutions, of course, if the economy comes back, we'll have an inflow of employment, but there will be fewer jobs here. We need to be investing in individuals. That involves sectoral training programs, which target them for specific sectors. It involves partnering with employers to create pathways to opportunity for workers who don't have four-year college degrees. Employers use that as too much of a barrier. And it involves initiatives like the organization 110 that hopes to put 1 million Black workers in jobs in the next 10 years, led by my friend Maurice Jones, formerly of RISC. So I think there's a big challenge ahead, but at least we recognize the opportunity, and I'm excited that people are prepared to invest. Thank you.
Thank you. And our final panelist is Dr. Brian Ulbrick, who is president and CEO of Gateway Technical College, located in Southeast Wisconsin. Dr. Ulbrick.
Thank you, Congressman Stile and Congressman Blunt Rochester and all the members of the Future of Work Caucus. We've heard a lot of information already today about the important need for the work that you do, and I believe it's your collective leadership over this important topic that will influence our nation's economic prosperity and guide communities like ours to a sustainable path forward. Gateway Technical College is located in Southeast Wisconsin. We serve Racine, Kenosha, and Walworth counties. It's one of 16 technical colleges in the state of Wisconsin. So my case study today is just a small sample of what not only was going on across the state of Wisconsin, but I dare say across all 1,200 community and technical colleges across the nation. As a geography reference point, we're located right in the center between Chicago and Milwaukee on the shores of Lake Michigan, the heartbeat of America's industrial build-out. Our college was established in 1911 to serve critical support roles for our community during some of its most challenging times, and COVID-19 has certainly caused us to live up to that testament. That dates all the way back to 1918 when the influenza pandemic struck our country, and Gateway Technical College was charged to increase its capacity for healthcare workers. In World War I and World War II, were Gateway students that built Army barracks to help support this country. You can go back all the way to many different challenges that our nation has faced, and our community and technical colleges are at the forefront of helping to rebuild and establish a new economy for the next future. All of this adversity has led to one thing that we have in common across our colleges, and that is resiliency. Certainly a different time with different needs, yet common ideals in preparing the American workers for the future of work. While our world has changed, our mission at Gateway Technical College is not. Every day we provide students, youth, and adults with the knowledge, skills, and attributes to succeed in the world of work. With over 70 academic programs, 5,000 dual credit high school students, and 234 corporate training contracts to upskill incumbent workers, Gateway serves, as its name portrays, a gateway for over 20,000 students annually. Today, new workers need new skills to meet the communities and to thrive and grow. And that means new delivery models, stronger support systems, and greater flexibility to meet student needs and employer needs. This will only happen if we strengthen the collaboration at all levels and reestablish our values as citizens in our communities. COVID has shown us how fragile our communities are in the areas of food insecurity, mental health, technology access, childcare, community health, and of course, transferable work skills. As an impact of COVID, we've learned clearly that it's a market-driven society, and the challenges that we face have seen unprecedented dislocated and unemployed workers. We also saw a complete downturn in the enrollment in community and technical colleges, which caused us to think seriously about the future of our college, along with the thousands of unemployed citizens in our region. I'd like to share just 3 brief examples of how we responded to address both the individual needs of our students and the greater purpose of our colleges. As soon as the Safer at Home order was enacted in Wisconsin now 13 months ago, Gateway moved quickly to a virtual or hybrid platform delivery to support students. This meant the deployment of new technology devices for our students and staff, setting up Wi-Fi towers on the campuses and communities across their region. We worked into the production of PPE equipment in our fab lab to donate to local first responders and secured our labs for essential training programs like police, fire, nursing, and yes, manufacturing. We know that in our region, it was important that our manufacturers had the support they needed to continue to produce the products that we all needed as citizens. One brief example, a colleague of ours at Precision Plus, Mike Reeder, the CEO, got offered a contract to work with General Motors to develop a specific part for ventilators. Quickly had to turn on a dime to produce that product, and there were Gateway students that helped to produce that item for us. Second example is public-private corporations and partnerships. We engaged quickly in short-term certificate programs to retrain dislocated workers into jobs that were growing throughout Southeast Wisconsin. Certificate-based programs like CDL, commercial driver's license, supply chain operations, certified nursing assistant, Google IT, and CNC operators. It was our responsibility to transform our training to meet the employer's needs. This effort allowed students to complete this training in weeks versus semesters. My example of that is a partnership with SC Johnson Corporation, where SC Johnson invested $400,000 in helping us transform short certificate programs. That $400,000 led to $2.3 million in economic recovery, but more importantly, to 237 residents that were back at work. And my last example, increasing our community asset by hosting COVID-19 testing sites on 2 of our campuses, coordinating health information in partnership with local health departments, and deploying nurses and EMS students to facilities in 6 communities across our region to help disseminate the vaccines for our community and keep people safe. I could go on with more examples, but I'm sure we'll get a chance to get into that in our discussions. My point is to remind us that it takes strategic investments to support training providers, students, and employers to thrive in an evolving economy reacting to a global pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you. And I am going to take a personal privilege, if you don't mind, Representative Stile, and have Representative Scott, the Chair of Education and Labor, offer questions or remarks and I'll come back to myself later. And I see other members are joining us as well. And I know our time is short, so I wanted to make sure that he gets his question in, but I will throw one out to the group to be thinking about for the whole panel. What can Congress do? With the upgrading of potential reauthorization of WIOA and a whole host of other things that we are working on infrastructure and other things, what can Congress do to upskill, reskill, and prepare the future of work? But I'm going to yield to the chairman, Bobby Scott, for how many minutes does he get? 3 minutes. This is going to be very challenging. I'll yield 2 more and give you 5.
Well, I'll cheat. I'll just pose the questions and then back off and let them answer. I want to thank you, Lisa, for your leadership, and Brian. Let me just, in the time we get, a simple arithmetic. You don't have time for everybody to get the time they really need. We have an infrastructure bill coming up, and one of the things that I think we're recognizing is that we need a lot of job training so that we have the workers to actually fulfill the jobs. Our inclination is to go with the WIOA boards that are in existence now. They will figure out what local jobs are needed, who needs training, and they'll make the investments. What are the shortcomings and strengths of using the existing structure of the WIOA boards as we go forth in the job training in the infrastructure plan? The second is there's a consensus that we should be able to use Pell Grants for programs that lead to a good job. Right now, you can only use a Pell Grant if it leads to a college degree. If all it leads to is a good job, can't use a Pell Grant. I think there's a consensus that that's ridiculous, but we don't want to open the door for every storefront to come in and take the Pell Grant money and deal out worthless certificates. What kinds of guardrails should we use? And the third question is what role should daycare play in support for displaced workers and job training programs? So I'll just let them talk as much time as you've given me, Lisa, and I appreciate the opportunity
Great questions.
to be here.
Great questions. WIOA boards. I'd love to hear some response on that.
I could jump in to start out, Congresswoman, because I'm fortunate. I serve on our local workforce boards, both the Tri-County area and local boards. And I'm fortunate because we have a great relationship, but I know that doesn't happen all across the country, that there are some structural deficits that maybe WIOA could look at, like including community and technical colleges in the leadership role and responsibility for the administration of those funds. Currently, as a training provider, we have to apply for those opportunities. And I think there might be some technical language that could be included to make our community and technical colleges that are already embraced across this country public providers of that training, that would reduce the barriers and put more leadership responsibility on the colleges to develop the short-term certificate-based programs that I mentioned earlier.
Great, thank you. And Secretary Hubbard.
Okay, thank you. I would just jump in as well. We have a successful board. We're advantaged in Delaware because we're a small state. We just got one state local board, and they are a very critical tool for us. We, in fact, think of them as our board of directors. In many respects, one thing we do need to improve on is, making sure that we are culling the membership, updating the membership as it reflects the industries that are in the state. I think sometimes we get good board members who serve for a while, and because they're good, they remain on the board, but don't necessarily reflect the new innovative industries that are emerging in our state.
Good. Okay. Anybody else? And then on the guardrails for Pell, I will just plug that I am one of the co-leads of the Jobs Act, which is focused on short-term Pell opportunities. And as we've seen through this pandemic, we need to be able to more rapidly get people into new jobs. And so I think the question of guardrails is a really good one. And if you can't answer right now, we will take your answers in writing afterwards. And then the last piece he asked about was David, Dr. Otter.
Yeah, thank you. Please call me David. That's okay. I would encourage, as you think about that, as Congress thinks about this, to include research as a really critical part of decisions about expenditure allocation. Most programs are well-meaning and do some good, but we really don't know which ones are highly effective and which ones are not. And there is an increasing body of rigorous evaluations of specific training programs, of financial aid programs that, for example, get people more rapidly to an AA degree or get them into, a medical vocation or so on. And the challenge is it's hard to scale all those. And so, it requires a lot of localized knowledge about what's effective. But it is really critical to use that to guide and structure. And when you say, guardrails, what's a guardrail? One guardrail could be, well, we're only going to use programs that are, certified in this way to be effective. Now that's too small a number to be actionable. But we can say they need to lead to a certificate that has recognized, market value, for example. So the evidence base is improving, not fast enough, but I would continue to invest in it and take it very seriously because it can be helpful.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Chairman Scott, for being with us and for your continued leadership and sticking with us on the future work. I turn it over to Brian Stile.
Thank you, Chairman Scott, for being with us as well. I appreciate it. I'm going to jump right in to a question. I was at Bradford High School last summer with the president at a period of time for the city of Kenosha that was really challenging. But also, there's a lot of great stuff going on. You think of Kenosha Bradford High School, it literally shares a border with Gateway Technical College. And Dr. Ulbrick, you're really at the forefront of really channeling high school into technical college and smoothing out this pathway and speeding up time to degree, which I think is a really important factor in allowing us to be efficient. Could you share with us kind of your experience, what you think is going well, and what you think in particular that we could make changes to, maybe it's the accreditation process, to allow this to be enhanced elsewhere?
Yeah, I appreciate that, Congressman. You're so right. I mean, if we think about a talent pipeline for employers, we also must think about it to help young people make informed decisions about their future in post-secondary education. So that whole concept of career development at its most extensive levels is so important. And I I know that the Council on Career Development out of Washington is working on some new white papers and strategies to help schools. But for us, it was critical that we understood how the K-12 system was evolving, just as our colleges were evolving. How do we align the new program areas that are happening within our region and give access to those programs to high school age youth? So we've built pathways for all of our academic programs that'll allow students starting their junior year to begin to take college level courses. I mentioned earlier, over 5,000 high school students are taking those courses. What that means is money saved in the family's pockets, right? Over $2.3 million were saved this year through transcripted credit agreements with our area high schools. We work collectively on making sure that teachers have the right credentials in order to meet all of our accreditation pathways. But one of the things that could help with all of that is, as we're learning with the COVID funding, how do we build increased capacity for the financial affordability of college? And whether it's a short-term certificate sponsored by Pell and a certified nursing assistant program or a Google IT support program, it shouldn't matter your age in order to take advantage of that. So if we get students in the pipeline earlier with transcripted credit, get them into certificate-based programs, leverage federal financial resources, we can really front end that pipeline for the jobs that are necessary. And just one quick question on the guardrails, I think was so important that was mentioned earlier. I think one of the key factors is to help identify those programs that are in high demand in your region, because it's not the same all across the country. We're growing an awful lot in advanced manufacturing, and those short-term certificate programs in IoT and cybersecurity are critical here, but they may not be the same in every region of the country.
Thank you very much. I'm going to pass it back to you, Congresswoman Blunt-Rochester, for the next set of questions.
Thank you. And thank you for those of you putting comments in the chat, particularly about WIOA, as you know, as the chairman looks to at reauthorization, potential reauthorization. I see on our screen that we have joining us Congresswoman Mary Gay Scanlon. I don't know, Representative Scanlon, if you have any questions or comments that you want to share. And if I still see her.
Thank you.
Oh, there she is. There she is. How are you? Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you so much to you and Rep. Style for organizing this event. You know, we've had a really real example of the kind of displacement that we're talking about here today, even before COVID. In 2019, the PES refinery in Philadelphia exploded. Literally exploded, hastening its bankruptcy after years of struggling to adapt to changing conditions. So it left over 2,000 people without a job, and many had to move across the country to find a job in the energy sector or try to stay and reskill in the Philadelphia area in a new industry. So Secretary Hubbard, you know, we talked a little bit about transferable skills. For folks who are displaced, like the workers at the refinery, what kind of programs can we steer them towards to try to match their skills with existing opportunities? And what could Congress do to create or expand on policies to help people find new jobs that they're qualified for?
Thank you for that question. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about this because clearly, you know, unskilled workers in our hospitality and restaurant industries were hard hit during COVID. And so there's a goal now to upskill them so that they are less likely to be impacted by this kind of downturn in the future. So we have, in Delaware, we created for COVID a short-term program using WIOA as well as CARES Act funds to create a Forward Delaware program. And in it, we targeted 5 specific industries where there was growth and plowed in lots of dollars for training and upskilling these individuals. And so we had a goal of reaching about 3,000 people in a very short-term period of time. We thought we'd have to be finished by the end of March, but we're successful in getting about 2,100 individuals trained quickly, and they will obtain degrees or certificate programs leading to long-term sustainable employment. The areas targeted were transportation, logistics, IT, some hospitality, and healthcare. Clearly, healthcare was an area that exploded during this time, and most of the healthcare has a pathway to far more greater opportunities moving forward. So we would advise that training dollars continue to be plowed into areas where there's scaffolding and pathways over time for people to be able to build on what they've learned at a very early at basic level.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mary Gay, did you have any other questions? You did well.
I will yield back. Thank you.
Awesome.
We're traveling in time. I think that means my good friend, Representative Kelly Armstrong from the great state of North Dakota is up for 3 minutes. Kelly.
I appreciate it. Thanks for letting me do this. Obviously, every state's unique. North Dakota has some unique issues. You know, prior to COVID hitting, we actually, I mean, we had, and even now we do, but we had 30,000 open jobs across the state. And so I guess maybe my question's a little different, is like, we've witnessed a huge cultural shift in the use of technology in the workplace. And COVID has forced everybody, I think, we all know this just by the fact that we're doing this right now, to adopt to these technological advancements, which have provided employees and employers with a new kind of flexibility. And there are people who continue to have the opportunity and have been moving out of large cities and into rural areas and still have access to some of these high-paying jobs. And if it continues, remote work has the potential at least to revitalize some of these certain areas. So I guess my question would be for Mr. Ulbrick is, obviously COVID's had a lot of challenges, but there have been some good things that have come out of it. What kind of policies are we going to need to facilitate more of this remote work things, so places like North Dakota can have access to workers who don't necessarily have to relocate there?
Yeah, I think thank you for the question, first of all. And I think it's equally important to think about how we deliver services, whether they're community or government-based services remotely or virtual, or in our case, education. So we've been working really hard in making sure that we create opportunities to close that technology gap and the digital literacy gap. So I think as we think about our role in community and technical colleges, serving as that bridge between our students trying to get jobs and trying to be more mobile and flexible, it's reaching deeper into those industry partnerships to establish the types of employment base that they're looking for, those new skill sets of digital literacy and the types of things that we know are important in, whether it's right here in our home community of Kenosha or Racine, or whether it's in North Dakota. We do that through partnerships. We've established a network of colleges across the country through the National Coalition of Certification Centers. And we get our guidance from companies like Snap-on, 3M, Train Corporation. They give us guidance on how the competencies ought to be delivered so that they can find their workforce both locally and then deploy it nationally.
And we have several junior colleges in North Dakota that are really advancing in this area too. And I think everybody, right, we've just kind of learned that we're all going to be a part of this moving forward. And I think we've all also learned we'd rather do this in person than stare at a computer screen. But there are opportunities that I think there are some things that we've learned over the last year that are going to benefit the workforce moving forward. And so I guess with that, thanks for letting me come, and I will yield back.
Thank you so much, Representative Armstrong. And next we are going to hear from Haley Stevens, who is the representative that is also a co-chair of the Future of Work Task Force for the New Dems and has been a leader in this area. Haley, turn it over to you for any questions or comments you may have.
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Lisa, and to you, Congresswoman Lisa Blunt-Rochester, and to Congressman Brian Stile, and to all of you. I remember when we were in the packed room in I think it was maybe in the Rayburn building launching this task force, and now we're on a packed Zoom with the chairman of the Education and Labor Committee. And Brian, I don't know if you remember me, but I used to be at UI Labs, and I did a bunch of work with you and my time in the Obama administration. So I always joke with Brian Stile. I go, okay, I know your sector. I know what you guys have. And you got these entities like Gateway that are just doing some phenomenal work. So it was really nice to see you and also hear the presentation about the way in which you've managed this pandemic and seen yourselves through and your stakeholders. And the reality is that, you know, pedal is to the metal in terms of our future of work needs and the boiling point that we are at in terms of inspiring people to go into the careers of today and tomorrow that are going to continue to propel America's innovation story forward. Because you look at this century that we're living in this millennium that was new at one point. Now it's not too new, but it really has been this story of the jobs of the future and the innovation capabilities. If it was from propagating the internet to proliferating the gig economy to giving people more abilities to connect with jobs, homes, loved ones just by the tips of their finger. And all throughout all of this is also our ability to make things and continue to make things. And I'm a fellow Midwesterner, like one of our task force co-chairs here, Mr. Brian Stile, and we know this in a very real way in Michigan with the automotive sector and our diversification into aerospace, and what we're seeing throughout, which is, manufacturing has recovered our supply chain, is answering some of the big challenges of today in terms of new vehicle technologies, as well as supply chain recoveries. And so we're going to continue, I believe, to liaise and work together and move forward together. And that's because we've got partnerships like with our guest speakers here today. And I just want to thank you all so much for your time. And to my friend Lisa Blunt Rochester, thanks for having me here today too. Thank you.
Thank you so much again for your leadership and practical leadership at that. That's what we like on this call. We're pragmatic optimists on this call. I see that one of my colleagues is on, but she's also on a phone at the same time. I don't know if she can multitask that great, but the great Robin Kelly from Illinois is also joining us, who has done a lot of work in the space of automation with our former colleague, Will Hurd. I'm going to turn it over to you, Robin, if you have any questions for the panel or any just comments that you want to share.
Hey, Miss Lisa, Congresswoman, thanks for inviting me. As you said, former Congressman Will Hurd and I have done a lot of work around artificial intelligence. And one of the topics that we're very concerned about is workforce readiness, because like in my district is urban, suburban, and rural, and some of the rural parts of my district, they can't even get online, on the internet. They couldn't even do e-learning or make appointments, for their vaccines. So when we think about artificial intelligence, is here and it's only going to become more prominent. So wondering what your guests thought about it and how can we get people more informed and less afraid of it. Like I admit, I am still a little afraid of it, and I do work with it. Our white papers are on workforce bias, ethics, research and development, and national security. But just curious what your guests think about artificial intelligence and the role it plays and will play.
Can I ask James if he would take that one, and Dr. Otter, and someone also needs to mute because we're getting a little feedback. So I'm gonna, James or Dr. Otter, if you wanna.
Thank you very much, Congresswoman, for the question. I think with regards to artificial intelligence, a few key points. First of all, it's going to contribute to the productivity and innovative capacity of our economy, and will contribute to economic growth and even job growth. It will also contribute to complementing what workers do. So those are all the good things. Having said that, though, there are some things we're going to need to watch and manage very carefully. One is the question of AI bias in AI algorithms. We've already seen that with regards to whether it's women, people of color, and various circumstances, including resource allocation, the criminal justice system. There's a whole set of arenas where those concerns about bias are very, very real. And we're going to need to think about how we regulate, provide oversight in those arenas. A second concern to think about is, are in fact the effects on the workforce? We know that for some occupations, it's probably going to accelerate the decline of some occupations, which leads us back to the purpose of this meeting, which is how then do we rapidly upskill and retrain our workers to be able to adapt as they work alongside those machines. So, this is a multifaceted question. We're going to need to address that. I wanted just to pick up on a point you made, which is, I happen to have spent the last 2 years co-chairing the state of California's Future of Work Commission. And the point you made about rural and other communities is very real for us. We realized that, in fact, we did have bigger digital divides than we thought we had before COVID. So that's another area. That's why I'm excited about the infrastructure investments. They can help address those digital divide gaps that we have in our regions.
Fantastic. And Robin, thank you so much for your participation and for
Thank you so much.
And I think we have had all of the members who are on speak, and I can go back to asking my question, if that makes sense, Brian. And so my question really at the front and at the outset, and I would like each member to give an answer to what can Congress do? We've heard some different things, everything from more investment in short-term training to looking at our WIOA boards and the governance, guardrails for Pell grants, short-term Pell grants, broadband expansion, and making sure that that everyone is also digitally literate. But I want to, if there's anything that we have missed, I would really love to hear from each of you, and we can start with David. We'll start with David. What can Congress do?
Great. Yeah, I mean, I think we've discussed a lot, as you said, a lot of these ideas. I think more broadly, and this was hinted at by Dr. Manika as well, reinvesting in the country. We have kind of fallen down in the job of investing in K through 12 education, but also in infrastructure, whether that's power or highways or broadband, and kind of recreating a lot of the activities that build a productive economy and a productive middle class. A lot of people, when they we think about the unemployed, we think about programs to unemployment. When we think about manufacturing, we think about manufacturing programs. But a lot of things that help workers and help industry are things that make us more productive. And a lot of things that can help us make more productive are these public good investments. Ultimately, and this comes into our competition with China as well. We're not going to be successfully competitive against China by holding China back. That's just not a long-term strategy. Investing in ourselves and restoring our R&D infrastructure and our educational infrastructure and all of the supporting stuff that allows people to work effectively, both in terms of skills and in terms of capital. That's a direction we should go. I'm glad the Biden administration is moving in that direction. I think it makes sense to go big. It will be expensive, and I think it will pay off.
Great, thank you, Dr. And then I'm going to turn to Brian Ulbrick. And you're on mute.
There we go. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. That'll be the most famous saying, I think, for 2021. But so a couple of thoughts. One, certainly I will advocate and continue to advocate for the short-term training process, because I think the quicker we can get people back into the workforce, the better off we're going to be able to sustain their own family lifestyles. And I think that's really critical. In 2009, Congress passed an act called the Trade Adjustment Act, and short TAC was the name of it, and it created opportunities for community and technical colleges to build out consortiums of colleges and partner with industry to develop new programs. And just some quick numbers on that. That was close to a $2 billion investment, but it served over 500,000 more students in our system. So 500,000 more students in the pipeline, and that's what's going to take in order to really ramp up the supply shortage that we need. And it also led to 2,700 new programs. And so as we talk about artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, data analytics, those are all new program areas and new career paths that need to be built out. And so I think an investment like that around these job training programs, similar to what TAC brought, would give us a catalyst to, again, engage in public-private partnerships focused on the most important skill sets that are necessary, and create an opportunity for our local communities to re-engage in new economy jobs.
Thank you. I wanted to be bipartisan there and give one of our guests each a chance. Brian, I don't know, I have gone over my time. Would love to hear from the others as well, but I'm going to turn it over to you.
If you want to take 1 or 2 minutes here, I know we're gonna actually pull this off within 1 hour.
No,
but if we want to just get real quick comments from Ms. Zumbiel, and then we can do the other two as well.
Great.
Sure, thank you. I have a few that would be great, especially within WIOA. So dedicated funding to individualized training accounts. Those are underutilized right now, and an opportunity, we believe, across the country to get more skills for individuals to go into manufacturing, as well as encouraging more of a focus on customized training. That's a model that's been really successful in North Carolina to help get individuals, especially incumbent workers and new workers, skill sets that they previously didn't have. So that would be fantastic. A little bit more broad, apprenticeships and earn and learn programs. I know the chairman's on here and has put a big focus on apprenticeship programs, which we appreciate, continuing that focus and encouraging more apprenticeships across the country and earn and learn programs. And then also the section 127 of the Internal Revenue Code only allows for $5,250 of educational assistance to an employee to be excluded from an employee's gross income. This amount we believe should be doubled or at least increased to $11,500 to increase participation in these approved training programs and encourage more private investment into workforce training.
That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you.
Could we have somebody comment on daycare or support that people might need?
Well, we got Secretary Hubbard coming up next, and she actually headed up the department. She was at Department of Services for Children, Youth, and Their Families before Health and Social Services. So, Secretary Hubbard.
Sure, and if I heard that correctly, it was around daycare. I think one of the things that we're trying to do in Delaware this year, we've asked in our budget for some funding for training programs that would allow whatever is not spent on training to be utilized as life support systems, whether it's daycare, electric, rent payments, so that an individual, the account could get a $10,000 grant. If they take a $7,000 training, they would have that resource available for additional life supports in that person's, that would be paid on that person's behalf. So on the other question, if I could just tag into the last question, one of the things we'd like to see is the development of a network of high-tech training providers in green and clean technology. That is not something that's really supported. We'd also like the opportunity to create innovation grants to enable states to submit concepts that may or may not be successful without being penalized. I believe that would spur innovation in large part. We know that some ideas will fail, but some will succeed. We'd also like to see some support for collaboration, incentives for collaborations within and among sectors, and also the modernization of tools, equipment, technology, platforms used to produce workforce products and enhance service delivery, virtual and on-site.
Thank you. Last one, James.
Well, thank you. Incentives for companies have always prioritized and subsidized investment in physical assets and R&D, but not investments in people. We could change that. As part of a 21st century economy, we could encourage companies to invest in worker training, upskilling, and retraining in a way that would not only help the workers, but quite frankly, make our economy more productive and more competitive.
Fantastic. Brian, back to you.
I think we're going to actually pull this off in 2 hours, Representative Lisa Blunt Rochester. Maybe it's time for closing remarks, if you agree. And I'd love to give Chairman Bobby Scott just a minute to provide his closing remarks, if you would agree to that, Congresswoman. And we can keep it tight, but I would just love to give you the moment to speak as well, Chairman.
Thank you so much. And I want to thank you for both you, Brian, and Lisa, for your leadership in this. We have an infrastructure package where we're going to need job training. We have to have a concept of jobs of the future, and how you make sure that the job training and job skills training is aimed at the jobs of the future. It's a moving target, is something we need more people thinking about. And that's why this panel is so important, and this focus is so important. So thank you, Brian and Lisa, for your leadership and vision in making sure that we are getting the next generation ready for the next generation's jobs. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. And thank you to all the members who participated today, all of our panelists and all those participating. I'd like to encourage us, we're trying to keep this within an hour, but to keep this conversation going as people have thoughts and ideas, to reach out to the caucus, to Congresswoman Lisa Blunt Rochester, to myself, to our teams. This is all about really finding solutions. And what I've enjoyed is this is really kind of, let's put the partisan politics aside. Let's figure out how we can actually address some of the problems. And that's what I've enjoyed working on with the future of work. And I appreciate all of our panelists engaging in this kind of thoughtful conversation that we don't have enough of in Washington, D.C., in my opinion. With that, I'll close my remarks and pass it back to you, and just really appreciate all the work you do for this caucus, Lisa Blunt Rochester. To you.
Thank you so much. And as you said, we're 4 o'clock. I'm going to be efficient and just say thank you to all of the panelists. Thank you to my co-chair. Thank you to our incredible staff and to all of you. At one point, I think we had almost 90 people on this call. And so it goes to show the interest. And as Brian and I have been talking about this from before the pandemic, we knew that this was a challenge for us as a country. If we want to be competitive, if we want to make sure that all boats rise and that our families and communities are strong and safe, that it was important for us to focus on this so that no one is left behind. And I am so proud of the work that we're doing, but there is so much more to really do. And so I'm glad to be in this with my colleagues. I see Mary Gay is still on the line, and all of the other members of our caucus. And again, just thank you. More work to come. Stay connected with us. And it's 4:01, so I yield back. And thank you. Have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you all. Thanks.